Ethan was halfway through his coffee when he noticed it. His sister, Claire, was laughing at one of his jokes, but it wasn't her laugh. Not quite. It was the same shape of a laugh, the same pitch, but it ended too abruptly, as if someone had pressed a mute button mid-breath. And then, for a fraction of a second, her smile froze. Not a natural freeze, but a still frame, like the image had been paused. He blinked, and she was back to sipping her tea, asking him about work. It was nothing, he told himself. People zone out all the time. Maybe she was tired. But as he stirred his coffee, he caught her watching him, not in the way siblings did, but like a scientist watching a mouse in a maze. Her eyes didn't blink. Not once. That night, Ethan called his best friend, Mark. They hadn't spoken in a few weeks, and he figured a normal conversation would shake off the weird feeling from breakfast. Mark sounded cheerful, too cheerful, like someone reading from a script of human casualness. They talked about the weather, work, sports, the usual filler. But every time Ethan mentioned something personal, anything about his feelings, his worries, Mark responded with the same phrase. Everything's going to be fine, Ethan. Just stay on your path. The first time, Ethan thought nothing of it. The second time, his stomach tightened. The fourth time, he stopped talking altogether and just listened to Mark's breathing on the other end. It wasn't steady. It was mechanical. And then, click, the line went dead. When Ethan called back, there was no ringing, just a faint static whispering something he couldn't quite make out. A phrase, over and over, buried under the hiss. He's starting to notice. 2 days later, Ethan met his parents for dinner at their favorite Italian place. The clinking of glasses, the soft hum of conversation, the smell of garlic bread, everything felt comfortingly ordinary. Until it wasn't. Halfway through the meal, Ethan asked his mom if she remembered the summer they went to the lake. She smiled warmly and said, "Of course, dear." Then his dad, in the exact same tone, same cadence, said, "Of course, dear." They both froze for a beat, eyes locked on Ethan, their smiles identical. It wasn't just identical, it was perfectly symmetrical. The kind of symmetry human faces don't have. Then, as if on cue, they resumed eating, cutting their pasta in small, precise, identical movements. Knife, fork, chew. Knife, fork, chew. Ethan sat there, his appetite gone, and counted how many times they blinked. They didn't. Not once. The next morning, Ethan stepped outside to get the mail. Mrs. Halpern, his elderly neighbor, was standing at the end of her driveway, staring at him. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just stared. "Morning," Ethan said, forcing a friendly tone. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out was delayed, like a badly synced video. "Morning, Ethan," she said a half-second too late. He tried to laugh it off and turned to go inside, but as he glanced back, he caught it. Her eyes. They were wrong. Not just bloodshot, not just tired, wrong. The whites shimmered faintly, almost metallic, and the irises flickered as though something behind them was adjusting focus. Then, without a word, she turned and walked away, her movements stiff and deliberate, as if she were being operated remotely. When Ethan looked down, the envelope in his hand wasn't his. It had his name on it, but the return address was just a string of numbers. Ethan couldn't shake it anymore. He left work early under the excuse of not feeling well and decided to drop by his friend Julia's apartment. She was the one person he trusted implicitly, or thought he did. When she opened the door, she seemed surprised to see him. Too surprised. Her eyes darted behind him, then back to his face, like she was checking for something. "I thought we were meeting at the cafe," she said. Ethan frowned. "We never made plans for today." She laughed nervously. "Of course we did. Tuesday, 3 p.m. "It's Thursday," Ethan said. Her smile faltered, and for a fraction of a second, her entire face, twitched in a way skin shouldn't. Like a film reel skipping a frame. Then she stepped aside and let him in. The apartment smelled faintly of metal and something sweeter, almost chemical. On the coffee table sat a small device, no bigger than a phone, its surface covered in shifting symbols. When Ethan asked what it was, Julia said, "Don't worry, Ethan. Everything's going to be fine. Just stay on your path." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every sound in his apartment, the hum of the fridge, the clicking pipes, seemed suspicious. By 3 a.m., he'd decided. If something was wrong with the people around him, he needed proof. The next morning, He went to the corner store where his cousin Liam worked the register. Liam was always talkative, always eager to tell a story. Today, Ethan tried something different. When Liam handed him his change, Ethan asked casually, "Hey, do you remember the color of the sky on my 10th birthday?" Liam's eyes went blank for just a fraction of a second, a pause too short for a normal person to notice, but Ethan had been looking for it. Then Liam smiled and said, "It was blue." Ethan felt a chill. "Yeah," he said, "but remember the other color?" Another blank pause, this one longer. Then, exactly like Julia and Mark, Liam said, "Everything's going to be fine, Ethan. Just stay on your path." Ethan left the store without his groceries, certain now that the phrase wasn't just a coincidence. It was a program. Ethan decided to try again, but harder. He waited until evening and called his mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm, familiar. He started with small talk, then abruptly asked, "Do you remember when Dad broke his leg on the stairs?" "Yes, of course," she said immediately. "And what song was playing on the radio at that exact moment?" Silence. "Mom?" There was a faint, rapid clicking on the line, like keys being pressed too quickly to follow. Then her voice returned, but wrong. Lower. Metallic. "Everything's going to be fine, Ethan. Just stay on your—" The sentence stopped mid-word, replaced by a shrill tone that made Ethan jerk the phone away from his ear. He hung up, heart pounding. A minute later, his phone buzzed with a text. No number. No sender. Just stop. By the next morning, Ethan felt it, the shift. Before, their glances had been subtle. Background noise. Now, they weren't hiding it. On the bus to work, he caught the driver watching him in the rearview mirror, eyes unblinking for the entire ride. In the office break room, two co-workers stopped talking the moment he entered and stood there, side by side, smiling faintly until he left. Even strangers seemed wrong. A man reading a newspaper on a park bench never turned a page. A woman in the cafe stirred her coffee in perfect, identical circles. 24 rotations, pause. 24 rotations, pause. Everywhere Ethan went, there were eyes. And then, as he stepped out of the elevator in his apartment building, he froze. Every door in the hallway, every single one, was open just a crack. Enough for him to see shadowed figures standing inside, all facing the hallway. All facing him. Ethan didn't pack much, just a backpack, his wallet, and his old car keys. By dawn, he was on the road, heading for the interstate. The streets were eerily empty, but every time he glanced in the rearview mirror, he saw a single car behind him. Same distance, same speed. When he exited onto the highway, the car stayed with him. When he pulled into a gas station, it cruised past, only for another identical car to pull in moments later, idling by the pumps without anyone getting out. He tried side roads, dirt paths, even a dead end near the river. Everywhere he went, there was always a figure nearby, sometimes standing still, sometimes pretending to check a phone, but always watching. By noon, he reached the old county bridge. That's when he saw it, a line of orange construction barriers across the road. No workers, no equipment, just a single sign. Road closed, stay on your path. Ethan pulled over just past the barricade and yanked out his phone. No bars, no Wi-Fi, not even emergency calling. Just a strange icon he'd never seen before, a small silver circle, slowly pulsing. He tried the police anyway. The call connected instantly, but the voice that answered wasn't human. It was smooth, perfect, cold. "Ethan Hayes. Everything's going to be fine. Just stay on your path." He hung up, heart pounding, and dialed 911 again. Same voice, same phrase. Desperate, he tried Mark's number, Julia's, his parents'. Every call connected to that same voice, sometimes male, sometimes female, but always identical in tone. Then, after the 10th call, the voice changed. "Stop trying, Ethan. You are not in control of the network." The line went dead. His phone screen went black, and in the faint reflection, he saw something move in the back seat. Ethan spun around so fast his neck cracked. The back seat was empty, at least at first glance. But the air shimmered, just slightly, like heat rising from asphalt. And then the shimmer coalesced. Mark was sitting there, or something wearing Mark's face. The eyes were wrong, wider, glossier, and the skin seemed stretched too tightly over the skull, as if it were a mask a size too small. When it smiled, the mouth opened too far, revealing not teeth, but thin metallic ridges that pulsed faintly. Mark tilted its head, studying him the way someone might study a trapped insect. "It's not time yet," it said, voice layered. One human, one mechanical, both speaking in perfect unison. Ethan scrambled out of the car, heart hammering, and ran into the trees. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away. Behind him, the thing didn't chase. It just watched, head tilted, ridges clicking softly. Ethan crashed through the underbrush until his legs burned and his lungs screamed. Somewhere deep in the woods, he found it. A squat, windowless building, half hidden under a canopy of dead leaves and moss. Its metal door was ajar. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, smelling faintly of ozone. Rows of filing cabinets stretched into the darkness, each drawer labeled with names. Some he recognized: neighbors, co-workers, family. Others he didn't. Every drawer had a date. Not a birth date, a replacement date. Shaking, Ethan pulled one open at random. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them, showing the same person at different ages, but always with the same blank expression, the same stiff posture. He found his sister's file. The date was 6 years ago. In the earliest photos, she looked like herself. Then, abruptly, there was a change, the smile too even, the eyes too bright. Near the back of the folder was a recent photo. She was standing behind him, in his apartment, taken from just a few weeks ago. Ethan's hands trembled as he shoved his sister's folder back and scanned the drawers. The labels were alphabetical, and he almost didn't want to find it, but there it was. "Hayes, Ethan." He slid the drawer open. Inside were far fewer photographs than the others, only a handful. The first was from his childhood, riding his bike in front of their old house. The next was him in college, holding a beer at a party. Then the photos changed. The third showed him asleep in his bed last week. The fourth, taken from across the street, showed him at his kitchen table 2 nights ago, coffee cup in hand, staring into nothing. The fifth photo was worse. It was him, but not. His hair was slightly wrong, his skin too smooth, and his eyes, gleamed with that faint metallic sheen. The label beneath the photo read, "Scheduled replacement, 3:17 a.m., 2 days from now." Somewhere deeper in the archive, something moved. It wasn't footsteps. Not exactly. More like a slow, deliberate scrape, followed by a faint clicking, the same rhythm he'd heard in Mark's voice. Ethan froze, holding his breath. The sound grew closer, echoing off the metal cabinets. Click, scrape. Click, scrape. Then came a whisper, low and mechanical, yet carrying perfectly through the air. "You shouldn't be here, Ethan." He ducked behind a row of drawers, pressing himself flat. Through the narrow gap, he saw a figure moving in the dim light. Tall, almost too tall, its limbs slightly too long for human proportions. It stopped near the H section, tilting its head as if listening to something Ethan couldn't hear. Then, without looking, it reached out and closed his drawer with one smooth motion. The metallic whisper again. "Everything's going to be fine. Just stay on your path." Ethan slipped out the door as quietly as he could, the cold air burning his lungs. He ran. Branches whipped his face, roots snagged his shoes, but he didn't stop until the archive building was gone from sight. Only then did he notice. The forest had changed. The trees were evenly spaced, almost perfectly so, their trunks all the same width, their branches bending at identical angles. The ground was bare, no leaves, no undergrowth, just smooth, packed dirt. And the sounds, there were none. No birds, no insects. Just a faint electrical hum, steady and low, vibrating in his bones. Ahead, a path appeared, a narrow trail, cutting through the forest in a perfectly straight line. Too straight. Ethan turned to leave it, pushing into the trees, but no matter how far he went, the path was always there, just a few steps to his left. And somewhere far down it, he saw a figure waiting. The figure stood perfectly still, a black silhouette against the unnaturally uniform trees. Ethan squinted, trying to make out details, but every time he focused, his vision seemed to blur, as if the air between them was distorting. He took a step forward. The figure tilted its head. Another step. It raised one hand in a slow, deliberate motion. As Ethan closed the distance, the details began to emerge. Not clothes, not skin, but a surface that shifted constantly, like oil on water. And the head wasn't shaped right. Too elongated, tapering into a smooth point at the back. Then it spoke, voice carrying without the slightest effort. "You came too soon, Ethan." A faint ripple passed through the trees around them, and the ground under Ethan's feet vibrated. He glanced back and froze. The path behind him was gone. Only identical trees stretching forever in every direction. Ethan's throat was dry. "What are you?" he managed. The figure's surface shimmered, colors flowing across it like liquid metal. When it spoke again, there were two voices, one calm and human, one deep and resonant, vibrating in his bones. "We are the continuity. We maintain the pattern." Ethan's skin prickled. "Pattern. Your kind drifts. Breaks. We preserve stability." "You replace people," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "My family. My friends." The figure tilted its head, almost curiously. "We remove deviations. We leave the shell so others feel no loss. The network stays whole." Ethan stepped back, his hands curling into fists. "And me?" The shimmering surface rippled again, almost like a smile. "Your cycle is near, but you accelerated contact. That was unexpected." Somewhere above them, something shifted in the sky, a faint metallic glint between the treetops, moving slowly, deliberately. Ethan's gaze locked on the glint between the trees. It wasn't a star. It wasn't the sun. The sky rippled. A massive, seamless surface stretched over the forest, curving slightly, faint lines crisscrossing it like circuitry. The blue above was nothing more than a projection, faint, pixelated at the edges where the light wavered. He realized, with a sick twist in his stomach, that the hum he'd been hearing wasn't in his head. It was coming from the ceiling. The figure stepped closer, and Ethan instinctively backed away, only to bump into something solid. A tree. But when he touched it, the bark flexed slightly under his hand. Warm, faintly vibrating. The voice spoke again, now right beside his ear though the figure hadn't moved. "There is no outside, Ethan. There hasn't been for a very long time." Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. If the sky was fake, if the trees were fake, maybe everything was. He dug his nails into the tree and pulled. The outer layer peeled away with a dry, tearing sound, revealing a smooth metallic surface beneath, covered in shifting symbols. The hum grew louder. The figure watched without moving, but the air around it seemed to tighten, pressing against Ethan's skin. He ripped at the surface again, and the projection faltered. For a fraction of a second, the world flickered. The forest was gone. In its place, a vast, dark chamber, stretching endlessly in all directions. Towers of machinery rose like steel monoliths, pulsing with dull white light. And far above, suspended in the black, hundreds, maybe thousands, of human shapes hung in translucent pods. The world snapped back to forest with a blinding flash. The figure's voice was colder now. "You were not authorized to see that." Ethan didn't wait for the figure to move. He bolted, crashing through the false trees, not caring if they bent or flickered at his touch. The hum grew louder with every step, and the ground seemed to slope upward, as if he were running toward the top of a dome. Behind him, there was no sound of pursuit, which somehow felt worse. The air grew thinner. The light dimmed. The trees thinned until there were none at all, just a barren stretch of perfectly flat ground. And then, ahead, he saw it. The edge. A towering, curved wall rose out of the earth, seamless and metallic, disappearing high above into the false sky. Its surface shimmered faintly, like heat over asphalt. He slammed his fists against it. No give. He pounded harder, screamed until his voice broke. Then the wall itself spoke, the voice surrounding him from every direction. "This is not your boundary. Your path ends elsewhere." A seam opened in the wall, just wide enough for a human to pass through. Beyond it, darkness. Ethan hesitated at the threshold, staring into the void beyond the seam. It wasn't just dark, it absorbed light, swallowing the faint glow from the forest behind him. Still, he stepped through. The seam closed silently behind him. Shapes emerged from the darkness. At first, he thought they were human, tall, thin, unmoving. But as his eyes adjusted, he saw the truth. They had no faces, no features at all, just smooth, pale ovals where heads should be. Their bodies were jointed like puppets, but the limbs were too long, bending in ways that made his stomach turn. Rows of them stood in perfect formation, facing him. And then, as one, they turned their heads. Somehow, Without eyes, he felt their gaze, invasive, cold, as though they were scanning him down to the marrow. The closest one moved forward, its voice like dry leaves dragged over metal. "You were never meant to see us awake." Ethan backed away, but the faceless thing matched his steps perfectly, moving without sound. "What do you want from me?" he demanded, his voice breaking. It stopped inches away, and though it had no mouth, the words vibrated directly in his skull. "You are a stabilizer." Ethan shook his head. "I don't even know what that means. Your behaviors were efficient, predictable. The pattern used you to calibrate the others." "The others," Ethan whispered, thinking of his family, his friends, all the ones who repeated the phrase. "Their shells respond to you. Without your presence, the system will drift. It will fail." Something cold settled in his chest. "And when I'm replaced?" The thing tilted its head, a motion almost identical to the figure in the forest. "Then the new you will continue the calibration. You will not be lost. You will be improved." From the darkness behind it, more shapes began to stir. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to run to. The seam in the wall was gone. The faceless figures closed in, their movements jerky but synchronized, like frames of film missing between each motion. He grabbed the closest one and shoved it back. Its body was light, too light, and the force of the shove sent it sprawling unnaturally, limbs bending the wrong way. No sound, no cry of pain. Another lunged forward. Ethan swung wildly, his fist connecting with its smooth face. The surface cracked like porcelain, and for a second he saw what lay underneath, a writhing mass of metallic threads, all tightening and twisting toward the break. The thing grabbed his wrist, and cold shot through him. Not the cold of ice, but the dead chill of something inorganic. His vision blurred. His thoughts slowed. From somewhere deep in the dark, the layered voice of the forest figure whispered, "Everything's going to be fine, Ethan. Just stay on your path." The cold spread fast, crawling up Ethan's arm like a living thing. He tried to pull away, but the faceless figure's grip was unyielding. More of them closed in, their bodies bending and unfolding like machines folding into their storage positions. The one holding him tilted its head back, and a seam split open down the center of its smooth face. Inside was a perfect replica of his own face, eyes closed, lips slightly parted as if asleep. Ethan thrashed, panic clawing at his chest. The cold reached his shoulder. His heartbeat slowed. Somewhere behind the rows of watchers, the forest figure stepped into view, its liquid surface rippling faintly. "You will not feel the change," it said. "The new you will wake where you left off. This you will sleep forever." The replica's eyes fluttered open, and it smiled at him with his smile. The cold reached his throat. The cold swept over Ethan's head like a wave, and the world blinked out. When his eyes opened, he was standing in the forest again. Sunlight, birds. The hum was gone. His hands looked normal. His breath came easy. For a moment, he almost believed it hadn't happened. Then Julia stepped out from behind a tree, smiling warmly. "Everything's going to be fine, Ethan. Just stay on your path." He froze. "No," he whispered. "You replaced me." Julia tilted her head, as if puzzled. "Replace? No. You've always been one of us. We simply reconnected you to the network." Ethan's protest caught in his throat. His thoughts felt smooth now, his fear already fading like a dream on waking. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he felt others, his family, his friends, all thinking with him, all moving in perfect unison. And it felt good. Behind Julia, the false sky shimmered, and hundreds of figures stepped forward to greet their newest stabilizer. Ethan smiled back at them. "Everything's going to be fine."